Hello and welcome to Sports Point of View, the podcast where Arizona sports takes center court, center field, and diamond. I'm your host, Joanna Rosali, bringing you all of the talk with no fluff and straight here from the Valley of the Sun. Before we jump into today's lineup, I just want to rewind a little bit. There was a special edition recap. Yes, we talked about the Kevin Durant trade from the Phoenix Suns to the Houston Rockets. So a special edition episode with the breaking news of the trade, with a massive shakeup here across Suns Nation. If you missed that episode, I broke down the implications, reactions, and what this means for the Suns building efforts with reporter and columnist Greg Moore of azcentral.com and the Arizona Republic. So make sure that you go back and check it out. If you missed it, you just go ahead and, go right on to wherever it is that you do listen to podcasts, click the download button and take a listen. And speaking of insight, now I am thrilled to welcome today's special guest, someone who's no stranger to breaking it down in the sports world with passion and precision. Joining us today is my special guest, Javon Adams. And I want to go ahead and get this right. And he is co-host of the Easy Sports Talk Show with Ed Smith and Believe in the Arizona Cardinals podcast. Also an independent artist, an entrepreneur, and a runner as well. We were talking just briefly about that. And, being... Not only is he not in the 5 a.m. club, he's in a special VIP club, which is the 4 a.m. club, which, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. I still refuse to do that. I'd rather, be a night owl. That will stand my ground.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I got to do it. I got to do it because I'm out there and as for those who are watching, you can tell I'm not I got the dark melanin going on here, so that sun hits me. It hits me a different way. So I got to get out there as early as possible. My wife has gone on me for so long, and so I've decided to listen to her and try to get out there early as opposed to later in the
day. You do think that, at least for myself, being born and raised in the Valley, being around, being in the heat, in the sun for, I don't know, years, I'll just put it that way.
20 years, like 18 years, something like that. So that's how we do it. That's how we do it.
Very, very kind of you. Thank you. And, I do not like the heat, regardless of me being a Phoenix native. I cannot get used to it. Can you get used to it? Technically, yes, you can. Not this, beautiful person here. And I just, I just give you all props, but...
Well, I appreciate it.
And then I burn, so easily. I peel, like I don't tan. And I have to do a special way in order for me to tan. It's a process. So I just burn and then I peel.
Gotcha.
Even though I'm brown, I'm a little bit on the lighter shade of brown, but then I just burn and I turn into, like, I don't know.
Indeed.
A weird shade of brown.
I hear you. People, you look at me, you think you don't get darker. I do. And I've seen it when I don't spray when I don't spray the stuff on me, and I can see that I'm a little bit darker. It's shades, but it's darker. It's darker.
Yeah, so, yes, not quite 50 Shades of Grey. No, but that's a whole other conversation for
yes, ma'am.
Entire other audience.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We're already kicking it up with the fun here. It's been too long, Javon. I have to do this more often.
Yeah.
I missed having you on and talking sports. I've also, been a special guest of yours and Easy Sports Talk with Ed Smith, another great friend of mine. Tell him I said hello. I will be speaking to him on Monday, actually.
I will. For sure.
But I want to go ahead and dive in here. There's so much that's happening. Typically, I like to stick with Valley sports. But one of the most major events in sports wrapped up, NBA Finals. So I want to touch on that a little bit.
Okay.
Just do a little NBA Finals recap. I want to go ahead and get your take on this. What did you think of the NBA Finals? It was the Indiana Pacers, Oklahoma City Thunder,
Mhm.
Oklahoma City Thunder won. It was a heck of a roller coaster of a finals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Something that you really don't see year after year. It was something totally different.
Yeah.
I liked it. And dang, and then like we'll get into Halliburton. We'll leave that to the end of this segment.
Okay.
But just aside from you know what happened with him tragically, what was your takeaway from this finals? How did you feel about it? In my opinion, I think we need to have more finals like this, not like you know your usual suspects.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I, okay. Full disclosure, I am a Lakers fan. But having said that, this was a great finals. One of the things that bothers me, and I paused because I was going to say annoys, but bothers me, is that when the bigger media, and this could be people that are within various, local markets, or even when you go regionally or when you go nationwide, is that they were looking for reasons to find they were trying to find reasons to take apart or tear apart this particular finals because they were small market teams. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. That is the most annoying thing in the world to me, because if a team is talented, a team is talented. And yeah, I understand that star power brings, so if there's a name, if there's a LeBron or if there is a Steph Curry, etc., those are going to bring some of the casual fans in. But this was a compelling finals because leading into it, and I know you know this, that the Oklahoma City Thunder were an overwhelming favorite, and
Oh yes,
I'm betting averse. So if I bet $5 and I lose $5, I'm out, and I'm just lamenting the fact that I even bet it in the first place. But having said that, because they were such an overwhelming favorite, people were saying, "Well, why should I watch?" And that's yeah, okay, well, yeah, overwhelming favorite, but you still have to play the games. That's why they always say the game is not played on paper. The game is played on the field, on the court, whatever the sport is. And so I thought it was compelling. The fact that Oklahoma City was so young, and they had to still, even though that they were the favorite, they still had to get through the process of understanding how to win a championship. And I thought it was compelling. It was unfortunate what happened to Tyrese, but yeah, I my son and I, my youngest son who's back from college, as I mentioned, off air, we were fixated on the finals to figure out what was going on, and we were just the ebb and flow, because it wasn't predetermined, and that's what a championship match should be, not predetermined.
exactly. And what I loved about this is the Indiana Pacers. One, an underdog. Very few people had them as a favorite or even as a contender to go to the finals.
Hmm.
The other part was how they played and came together, especially their bench and their defense, coming from behind and winning in like literally the last half a second of a game.
Yeah,
That's where stars are made, championships are made from.
true.
Fortunately, I believe if Halliburton would have been able to play entire game 7, that could have changed things. Um, it was just fun and amazing to watch. And it just baffles me that I saw this on social media and I was like, no, this isn't true. And then I was like, oh no, oh what in the world? Oklahoma City Thunder, the guys, they like are all under 21, or at least most of them. So that was, something that you really don't see, and how young these guys are,
Yeah,
and still so much potential. And
yeah.
they're just getting started.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of, 20 early 20s for sure, mid to early 20s. And so the thing about that is that the way that this team was constructed, when you hear about what Sam Presti and how he constructed this team, and how he's been the GM for this team for many years. I mean, he drafted when he drafted Durant, and so put that first really good Oklahoma City team together. But the point with that is that when they have so many draft picks, and so they have this stockpile of potential that's awaiting, but they have this championship. And so what that does is that there's certain things that come to mind with me with having the stockpile of assets there, potential assets, is
Mhm.
that there are going to be hard decisions that have to be made when it comes to keeping this team together, because it's just the nature of the business where the third best player on the team or the fourth or the fifth could think that he should earn more than, that he's worth more than he's being paid. And so maybe Sam Presti will have to say, we'll let this player go. But it just goes to show that in this era, this iteration of the NBA, with the aprons and all those things, that you really can build a championship. And if you put the right group of people together with the right coach and all those things fall into place, that you can win. But it also shows, and I know I'm sure that you saw some of the footage where, because some of these players are so young, and because maybe they haven't, when I was in college, I drank more than I should have, but some of these players hadn't had any type of alcohol before, and so they're tasting it, and it tastes gross and all that, and that's fine. But the thing is, because it was, their celebration seemed so muted, because they won so soon, that there wasn't a lot of failure that went along this journey, and which is fine. But because of that, you're thinking, oh yeah, we won. That's cool. Whatever, man. I'll just, what's today? It's Monday. It's Sunday. Okay, yeah. I'll see you on Wednesday, man. We'll go and kick it I'll meet you we'll play some pickleball. And so there's just a different way in which they react, or they respond to winning a championship, where somebody like a LeBron or a Steph or a Kobe, Shaq, etc., that have gone through so many defeats would really go over the top and be more effusive with their celebration. So it's just interesting to see.
It was, and one of the way that I said it was like a breath of fresh air, you
Yeah.
know, something totally different. And hey, I just applaud those guys, and I want to ask you, Javon, what can other teams learn from OKC
Hmm.
in the way that they did things and to get to the finals so soon?
You have to be strategic. It reminds me, that's the first thing that comes to mind, is strategic, because there are Danny Ainge is another GM. When he was the GM and president of for the Boston Celtics, and he was amassing so many draft picks, and so some of those picks, I mean, they ended up ultimately winning a championship. Of course, we know the Celtics, but I don't know if he really cashed in on a lot of those chips per se. But what he did was, the moves that he made, he left. And yes, I know that the coach that was promoted, and so now he's the GM. But he ultimately cashed in on, like, the things that the seeds that were planted by Danny Ainge. So if nothing else, that what Sam Presti tells you is that you can do this a different way. You don't have to just always overpay for talent to come in. You can stay the course if you have an owner or ownership that gives you the time to do that. It doesn't matter the sport. I mean, this is especially true in football or soccer, as I say this, that
Mhm.
the time frame for a coach to win, or the rope that's given, is so short. The leash that's given, whatever euphemism or analogy you want to use, is so short that they never get a chance to really build their program. And so I think what Sam Presti has been able to do is been given the breath, given the rope, a long rope, to be able to build this and be able to see it come to fruition. So this should go to ownership. This should go to be able to, if you believe you have the right people in place, let them do their job. Almost like a Pittsburgh Steelers approach. Let them
Mm.
do their job, so that hopefully it will bear fruit and you will win championships at the end.
Yeah, I I like that, and I hope some of this is what the Phoenix Suns will implement in their
I don't know.
new.
I don't know, because he has. so when I say that, so you mentioned in the beginning, you're an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, and so I would like to think when I remember when I was promoted to management, I would say the second time I was promoted to management, and I know I wanted to trust my span of control, my employees, but I was a little bit more hands on than I probably should have been. So I'll admit that, and I'll raise my hand. So I would imagine if you put hundreds of millions or billions of dollars into a team, you're going to be you might be a little bit more hands-on because that's not your money, that's my money that's up in there. And
True.
but the thing is, again, it does go back to, because if you believe that you've hired the right people, you have to let them do their job.
And that is what forms success.
Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard. Woo, it's hard.
Definitely. And I've myself as an entrepreneur and being a manager, executive, and I pretty much have had every hat in the mix of there is to be in business. And that is exactly the key, is trust in the right people that you hired, and things can flourish.
Yeah. Because with the Suns, hopefully they're ascending, but it's been concerning for a couple of seasons at the very least.
Definitely. We will circle back to the Phoenix Suns here shortly, but to wrap up this NBA Finals recap, I do want to touch on Halliburton.
Yeah.
His injury, it was unfortunate to see. I happened to not catch the moment of when it happened. I happened to catch afterwards. But one of the things that I did notice, and I want to also pose a question to you with this.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the game, he was warming up, and it seemed like it was questionable whether he would play or not due to a calf strain.
Yep.
He was practicing, and you can see that he was probably having a little bit of an issue, but we do see him suiting up for the game.
Yeah.
Then we see what happens, and he goes down in pain and is carried off and has surgery.
Yeah.
One of the questions is, could it have been avoided?
Okay. I would say possibly. I remember asking my son, and so both of my sons. So I have two boys. One is 24, and the other is 18. And so my youngest is home from college on during the summer. And so I asked him after it happened. I asked him. I said, because he played youth football. He played a little bit of youth basketball, but he played high school football as well. And I asked him, would you have played? If that was you, would you have played? And he said, yeah, I would have played. And I said, why? He said, well, because I'm in a championship game, and that's what you do. And I said, well, I wouldn't have forced you to. He said, well, you wouldn't have had to force me. That's what you do. That's what you're there for. That's what you're playing for. That's what you practice for. So there's that. And I think that Halliburton has even said that he would, if he had it all to do again, that he would have done it. But I think the outside noise for people that have never been in that position, because that's why I asked him, because I was a pickup basketball guy, right? So I was never in that position. And because when you have a Stephen A. Smith, and when you have some of these other talking heads that say, well, you gotta play, and if you don't play, and so they're already trying to make him out to be the villain if he doesn't play, when they've never been in that position. I think that's the slippery slope there. And even when you had a Kendrick Perkins, and you said you gotta play, so at least he played. So yeah, so I understand it, but it is very slippery, because you're losing a year of your career. Kevin Durant had this happen when he was playing, when he was in the finals playing with Golden State, and they were playing in the finals against the Toronto Raptors. And so it's not just you could get injured and you can miss a week. you're missing a year of your career. I was going to say a year of your earnings, but it's not the same because he's under contract, but it doesn't matter. That's a year of your career. That's a year because when you come back to the team this time next year, right?
Right.
It's a different team. It's not the same team. You're not the guy. They don't know you so much, even if they're your teammate, even if you've played with them before, it's different because you've been away from the team. That's a lot to put on the line. And so I can't give somebody like a Tyrese Halliburton grief for not playing, and I give him a thumbs up for playing. But man, I don't know if I don't know if I would have. I probably would have. I could say I probably would have, but would I have gone 100%? I don't know. I don't know because he was going
Yeah.
100%, and he was having a great start to that game, and then that just trying to push off, and then you saw it. You saw so many replays of that you could see essentially when that hamstring when that Achilles just snapped, and that's unfortunate because Stephen A. Smith doesn't have to worry about that. He can just come back the next day. It's
Right.
cool. He Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
It doesn't
Friday.
bother him.
Not a
Yeah.
big deal. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. But you can get all the thumbs up in the world for being a warrior or being a soldier, but they'll forget about you because you're on the sidelines, soldier, Mr. Warrior. You're on the sidelines. So it's
Right.
definitely a tricky situation.
Yeah, because I like try to think of it and like what ways that could have been avoided. Maybe yeah, maybe play, but maybe not have come off straight away. Maybe just coming off the bench, limiting minutes. There's so many ways, and maybe it could have been avoided, not for him to not completely play. Or I know he probably wouldn't. He wouldn't sit out. I more than likely wouldn't sit out. Um, I give him props for trying and getting in there.
So think about it. You on the bench, your coach comes to you and says, okay, you can go in there. I need you to go 60%. You saying, nah, I'm going 100%. If I'm going in, I'm going 100%. So that's
Yeah.
the thing, because that's what got you to this point in your career, because you have a championship attitude.
Mhm.
And so you can't, so trying to, it's like if when what is the song, shine like a diamond, dull your shine. No, you're not dulling my shine. I'm going to go out there and give it everything I have. And that's the thing, when you have it with any athlete, regardless of the sport, to go out there and do what they can. But it's so heartbreaking when you
Yeah.
see an athlete that goes out because they want to do the best for their team because they're in a leadership position, and they fall short because their body gives out on them, and now they're sidelined for months and months, or a year plus, and who knows when they're going to get back to that level of efficiency and
Yeah.
performance.
Or even if they get to that level of where there used to be a performance, that's for me,
Yeah.
it's just such a fun line, not to criticize or anything, but there's always, could it have played out differently?
Yeah. Yeah.
So keeping on with basketball, bringing it home here to the Valley, I want to go ahead and join in the conversation, or continue the conversation, I should say, with Kevin Durant. Phoenix Suns
Hmm.
trading Kevin Durant. He went
Hmm.
to the Houston Astros. So here we have some of what went down with that trade. And I'll just go ahead and mention it here for those that may have missed um, how it all went down. So Kevin Durant goes to Houston. We have Phoenix Suns, who receive Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, number 10 in the overall pick in the NBA draft, and 5 second-round picks, which we will get into the draft just here shortly.
Hmm.
Um, so I want to go ahead and ask you, Javon,
Yeah.
how do you feel about this?
It had to happen, right? It's when they made the trade, I didn't think it was a good trade. I remember saying it to my partner Ed. I said, I don't like this trade, man, because the, forgive me again. I'm a father of two, so when the boys were little, I remember when they were in elementary school, and there was this thing about being a bucket filler or a bucket dipper. A bucket filler is somebody that encourages you and lifts you up, right? A bucket dipper is somebody that has a negative mindset, or they do things that bring you down. Kevin Durant, for as skillful as he is, he's never a bucket filler. He's never a bucket filler, except for when he was on, except for when he was on Golden State, because there were a bunch of bucket fillers around him. But what does that mean? It means that he's not the tide that lifts all boats. So I know I'm mixing metaphors and all that, but if you think about his time here, he wants the ball. Yeah, he wants the ball, but he's not an alpha. You don't have to be an alpha to be to be a
Right.
star. But the team was constructed poorly. And maybe that was a result of Ishbia coming in and wanting to make a splash. And you heard all those different theories that come into that. And I think there's probably there's something to that. But you can have the best player, you can have a great player, but if there's no alpha, then maybe there's no culture or there's no real direction. And to top that off, it's when you look at social media, when you look at Durant's social media, that's a real sensitive dude. I mean, I can't be mad at him for wanting to defend himself and be vocal and really interact in that way. But sometimes it can be a little bit too much, and maybe that makes you a
Yeah.
little bit too thin skinned. And I think it was time. Did they get a good haul for him? I mean, the dude's 37 years old, and I think they gave him a little too much. Um, I think they tried to bend in his direction a little bit too much when it came to finding a team for him. As opposed, he's not Bradley Beal, so you can trade him to whoever you want. Now that might change how much you get, but you don't have to say, Kevin, what would you like? We would like to trade you here. We would like to do this. You don't like that? Okay, we'll come back to you with another deal. But it had to happen, and I think Houston will probably find out the same way that the Nets did and the Suns did, that Kevin Durant is really good. He's great. He's just not going to
Yeah.
be. He's not going to be the one that tips it in your favor if you don't have some other alphas and some really other great players that can really influence the outcome there.
Yeah, for me, it's heartbreaking. I still can't get over it. I'm gonna miss Kevin Durant. I think he was not appreciated enough. One,
Okay.
mainly because of partly because of the what you just mentioned and how people perceived him and his character. And that's really not all Kevin Durant. You go out, you go out there, you see him. He interacts with people.
Yeah.
He is a good person. He is kind, and conversations he has are great. You have with Kevin Durant are great. Um, and you put him to ball, and you have the right people around it that can contribute,
Yeah.
to that can highlight his essence. He becomes a great baller. We saw
Yeah.
that in the Olympics.
True.
So, and he
Very
had
true.
that with the Warriors.
Hmm.
He did not have that here in Phoenix. So many things I didn't have. So that also dulled him, and him able to highlight on what he can do, his
Yeah.
performance, and also kind of putting, in a way, carrying that team more than he should,
Yeah.
and being the one that's putting up all the, not counting Devin Booker, also, feeling that pressure that he needs to come out with 30 plus points every night,
Yeah.
and then still falling short. And in my opinion, I think he was underappreciated for his talent and what he can do or he would be able to do, and not, to your point, think that they Suns tried to made a huge splash and didn't do things right, which then in turn, here we are and what we're dealing with. And I do not think that they should have done the Beal
Oh,
acquisition the way that they did.
no. No.
If that could
No.
be changed, and he did not have that no trade clause, and they can
Yeah.
send them and be able to keep Kevin Durant, I think that would have been doable and form around Kevin, Devin and Kevin.
Yeah. Here's here's something that's interesting too. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So let's say if when Kevin Durant went to Golden State, Draymond Green was not there. And let's say Curry was there, but Draymond Green wasn't there. I don't think they would have won a championship. Just because of the alpha, even though Draymond Green is definitely not as good as Curry and or Durant, but it's that alpha. So the alpha that was here that they let go, and this is one of those things where I was unsure about him coming to the team, and then when there was rumored that they were getting rid of him, I wasn't sure about that either. But Chris Paul was the alpha.
Oh my
He
gosh, you
was
read my
the
mind.
he was the annoying alpha. He was the super annoying alpha. Don't get me wrong, but at least it was one of those. So just because you're being paid the most doesn't mean that you are a leader in your business or in your on your team, etc. So when
Right.
you look at Devin Booker and you look at a Kevin Durant, they are supremely talented. They are not alphas, which means that they are not leaders in that way. They can be a leader by example. Hey, if we're supposed to get to the gym at 8, I'm getting there at 6. Y'all see I'm here at 6. I don't have to tell you I'm here at 6. By the time you get here at 7:30, you see I'm here. You ask me when I'm here. I told you I got here at 6. So that's how I'm leading. I'm leading by example. You see
Right.
that I'm in the gym. You see I'm doing these things. But if you messing up, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to just look at you and say, this is how I work. See me work. But somebody like a Chris Paul or insert whatever other leaders around the league, and they'll say, man, I was here at 6. How come you wasn't here at 6? Well, because I get here at 7:30. Get here at 6. And so, man, I hate you, but I'm gonna be here at 6 because I understand that's what we need to do to win. And so those little things that end up being big things are what a team like the Suns missed out on when they got rid of Chris Paul to get Bradley Beal, who has a no trade clause. So you can't get mad at my brother because he has a no trade clause.
I'm so glad you brought this up. Oh my gosh, I'm covering my face because I'm like trying not to laugh, but then at the same time I'm crying, but I'm laughing because I want to cry. And it's like, this is a conversation that I have with many people of a world or in basketball, NBA. Some get it, some don't get it, don't understand it, or refuse to. It's exactly your point. Exactly what you said is exactly what I believe as well. In my opinion, I believe that the Suns should have. This should be who the Suns should still have, and of course, we have Devin Booker. We're going to keep Devin Booker. We better keep Devin Booker. They should have not traded Chris Paul.
True.
They should have not done the whole entire Beal thing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not.
And then that way it leads them into a better situation.
Yeah.
Of course, with Kevin Durant and having Chris Paul and Devin Booker this past season, it would have been a different outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And now leading into this season, okay, yes, you do have to make moves. Do it with your other guys that are, you can do that with.
Yeah.
You have the G League, which you have some phenomenal players there and top performers, and which is I'm glad with that they did bring a couple of those up and to shine and help the team out.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. They wouldn't have had to trade Kevin Durant. We would have had that alpha, and it's that winning mentality and getting in people's faces and being the bully on the court, but being able to lead your team and be able to go ahead and with those 3 people be able to mentor the younger ones, bring them up, and be in a more successful position.
Yeah.
And maybe who knows, we would have been able to make the finals this year.
Remember when Carmelo Anthony was traded from the Nuggets to the Knicks, and for a long time they said that Carmelo Anthony was just he was just a really good player on a mediocre team. Yeah, they made the playoffs once or twice, but it was just like a mediocre team. They made the playoffs, right? And that's what Bradley Beal is. That's what Bradley Beal is.
Oh
Bradley
my
Beal,
god.
I'm a Laker fan, so I didn't want Bradley Beal on my team. And there was a time when my sons and we had season passes to the Suns. And so this is, but the point, what I'm getting at is that I thought this is a bad idea because he's a gunner and he's a scorer. Yes, so he's a scorer, comma, and he plays on a bad team, right? So I didn't see how that was going to work. And there's a no trade clause. So whoever's making the decision, so I could tell you, I'm the owner, and I put you in a position of power, and I say, hey, I want Bradley Beal, and you say, look, he plays on he's a gunner for a bad team, and he has a no trade clause, and I say to you, I want him anyway. And since I'm your boss, you're going to do it. And then when we get him and then what you've told me comes to fruition. And then I say, why'd you let me trade for Bradley Beal? I try to tell you, get him off the team. We can't because he has a no trade clause. Bradley Beal and LeBron James, they are not in the same conversation for being
Mm-mm.
on the same level of talent or
No,
legacy or whatever
no,
you want to say. And
none.
those are the only two players, correct me if I'm wrong, that have no trade clauses in the NBA. I mean,
From what I know, you are correct.
and so so I can't be mad at Bradley Beal because y'all traded for me. Y'all know who I am, right? Whatever. All right, I'm gonna go and do the same thing I've been doing over here in Washington. But all that stuff. So it's just a terrible mixture of players with no alpha once you took Chris Paul out of this mix. And so if Chris Paul don't get me wrong, they would have won. They would have been a miserable bunch of people because Chris Paul is not necessarily the person that makes you want to hang out and sing Kumbaya. But they would
Right.
have won. They would have made the playoffs. They would have at least been they would have been closer to what their true potential was
Yes.
versus what they were the last season and a half, 2 seasons.
Yes. I so want to cry over that Beal situation. Every time I think of it, I'm just like, ugh. So I do want to go ahead and move on to the NBA draft. But the
Yeah.
last question I have on this conversation before we ditch it, talking about Beal,
Mm-hmm.
what should the Suns do? What can the Suns do with the entire Beal situation, if anything?
They can try to do what they've been doing to try to build this team through the draft and make that trade with Durant to try to build this team. Well, they're trying to do something that is so difficult, and I know you know this because I know you've heard it locally said where they're trying to rebuild on the fly and trying to rebuild without tanking, right? So it's very delicate. So you have to make every right decision. But when it comes to Bradley Beal, what are you going to do? You're going to tell him that you don't want him here? You already told him that when around the trade deadline, and he said, "That's cool. I'll see y'all Tuesday. We don't want you here. I'll be here. That's how I get paid, right? I like it here. I like it. I like going to camp. I like forgive the movie analogy. You got me on here, so you got me. But I like hog maw. I like pig feet. You know what I'm saying? I want to go to Camelback Mountain. I want to go to Mrs. White's. I want to go to Lolo's. That's when I'm here. I'm here. You got me. You don't want me here?
Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm here, right? But the thing is, so the rumor is, and this if they do this, this is egregious. If they do it, has to be a crazy rumor, but that they're thinking about just cutting him and just paying him to not be on the team, which is silly because he's owed tens of millions of dollars. So that's just ridiculous, right? But yeah,
I do not want a Bobby Bonilla situation with the Phoenix Suns.
oh no, please no. Please no. Because if they cut him, somebody else could sign him and they would still owe him the money.
Exactly.
So don't do it. Don't do it. So what you have to do is try to figure out how to best utilize him. And and it's easier said than done. So I'm not saying that it's easy, but y'all traded for him. Y'all traded for him. Oh my goodness. And
I
when it
didn't, but
is but so what they have to do is try to really focus on what can Devin Booker try to bring in some young talent. Hopefully, I was gonna say hit a lick. So forgive my slang, but they would really try to hit the lottery and really land on these players and hope that they grow and they mature very fast so that you can give the fan base something to be excited about. That's what they have to do.
and speaking of which, trying to get the fan base excited, there's been some excitement, partially with what the Phoenix Suns have done with the NBA draft in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Partially, I will say,
Yeah.
because there was a big, huge question mark at the end of the draft as well. So I want to start with the number 10 pick which was for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna say this wrong. Please do forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
Kaman Maluak.
Malawach. I think it's
Maluach.
Malawach. I
Thank
think
you.
it's Ach, but I think so. But yeah, we there. We in the quadrant. We in the quadrant. We good there. We good there.
Yes. So I'm watching the draft play out yesterday and seeing this young guy
Mm-hmm.
and seeing his story or him telling his story. I just got a soft spot for him and the way he is and the demeanor. It just warmed my heart
Yeah.
hearing about it and then seeing it
Yeah.
with his experience in the Olympics in action with Devin Booker, and then here we are a year later, literally a year later, and now
Yes.
he gets to play with the guy. You know, it just makes me excited. He's not to mention he's a good player as well. I'm
Yeah.
not discounting that. So we have that happened,
Yeah.
and then also to that we have that the Suns traded for or they agreed to trade for Hornets center Mark Williams, which
Who
is
the
also
Lakers? Who the Lakers said, nah, he ain't gonna pass. He ain't gonna pass muster. I don't know what the deal is, but either I hope that because I know the Suns staff is going to they're going to do their due diligence and make sure that he passes or passes or doesn't. But
right,
yeah, hopefully he passes because he's had some durability issues, if nothing else.
right, and which is where kind of became the question mark was that, and then he's also this is the second go around it because he was part of the
Yeah, it was a trade.
Richards
Yeah,
when the Phoenix Suns acquired Richards, he was also in the mix, and then now we've seen it here playing out during the draft. So, give me your take on these two gents.
it's interesting because the one of the theories is that because the Suns didn't expect Malawach to be there for them to pick. That's why they were going behind. That's why they were trying to make that deal for Williams. And so it's one of those things where if it's possible that if they had their druthers, they would have just gone with Malawach and not gone with Williams. And so but now they have two big men that will be on the team. But if nothing else, I mean, I think the consensus is that Malawach is going to be was a good pick, that they made a good pick, and this is something that should be good for the team. But so now the work comes in for the coaching staff and for the player to improve, because yes, it's you hear the stories of he only started playing when he's 13. Okay, but we need you to be able to accelerate your learning curve so that you can develop maybe a go-to move this year, maybe next year, two go-to moves. And so those are things that are going to be imperative for not only the player, but for the team to really show that growth. And Yeah, to being able to have two bigs, what's the offense going to look like with Ott? What is his what is his offense? What is his offensive philosophy? Because you got two 7 footers. Is it going to be a lot of just throwing lobs? And if you're just throwing lobs, and that can stunt the growth of those big men because you're not trying to help them on the block and trying to develop those low post moves because all we're doing is throwing you lobs. So it depends on how this team fills out. But when you got Dylan Brooks, who I would love to have on my team as a Lakers fan, I don't like to play him because he's a dirty player. Because he's a dude that'll he'll do just enough to get under your skin. And I know that you've heard this because you know that him and Devin Booker don't necessarily like each other. So now they're on the same squad with each other. So are they cool
They
now?
played in the Olympics together, so
So what's the deal? So what are they good? But yeah, so it's at least with the draft pick that they made, are they going to do? Are there going to be other moves that they're going to be able to make? And then the elephant in the room is, will they be able to convince Bradley Beal? Maybe they'll get him like some bunt cakes and say, "We'll send you bunt cakes if we can get you a trade." I don't know, but something I think should be able to do to get Bradley Beal to accept the trade. But at least they have seemed to made the right draft pick with that number 10 pick, if nothing else, yesterday.
that is the one that I am so excited for, is exactly that number 10 pick. But then I have a whole bunch of question marks,
Yeah.
throughout the remainder of the draft, because they've traded this pick for this other pick, or second round picks for this, and this, and it all gets all convoluted and all confusing, which I'm not even going to try and go into.
Yeah.
Which makes you question, why do you want to do that when you have the pick now and just pick it, choose your pick when it's a potential and you can go ahead and bring them up? A big old thing.
Yeah. Depends on how many of your players are attractive to other teams. Therefore, if they're not, then you got to just make these picks and make them for yourself. What did they do today? They packaged the 2 second-round picks to get the number 41 pick from the Golden State Warriors. So yeah, so with the question marks coming in with the new regime from the GM standpoint, so it seems like they're trying to do some things to make some moves. So we'll see, because there was a lot of trepidation with this new regime change, but so hopefully things happen for the benefit. But again, this is one of those things where this is how I compare it. So we know that Devin Booker is a Kobe Bryant fan, right? He's a Kobe Bryant dude. Kobe was not necessarily the best leader. And so just the same way that, say, Michael Jordan was not necessarily the best leader, they were bullies. They were bullies. I mean, if you just break it down, they were bullies.
They were.
But one of the things that people said about Jordan was that, yeah, he was a bully, but there were certain things that he would do to let you know that he got your back, right? So the reason I'm mentioning this is because with Devin Booker, if you are that guy, and if you're going to be here, you're going to have this possible big, extension, this 2-year, I think it's $150 million, $775 million a year, 2-year extension that's on the books for him coming up this summer that could possibly happen. You got to do a little bit more, man. You got to do a little bit more than what you've been doing, because if you continue to do what you've been doing, then you'll get the same results. It's the definition of insanity. So that's what you have to do. So that might mean getting out of your comfort zone. So, we were talking offline. And so when it comes to, sometimes when you're in your head, like I'm talking to a therapist, right? I'm trying to see what I can do to get out of my head. So something needs to change, Devin Booker, if you're supposed to be that dude when you got these dudes coming in, so that you can, so that the stay that you have here, there's nothing worse than going to work when you hate going to work because it's going to be another terrible day. So let's make it as many good days as possible. And so that's what you got to do, D-Book.
Exactly. So I have so many questions, so many doubts. Excited for something. So we'll see how this season plays out for the Suns. I have low expectations. It's just
yeah, I hear you.
So I want to go ahead and I know we're here a little bit over time, but I do want to get your take on Arizona Cardinals, and I want to touch
Mhm.
on the training camp here.
Yeah.
The training camp schedule has been released, and it's changed so much over time, especially over the last couple of years, couple of seasons. We're seeing how it was before, roughly in like 20 games that would be available to the fans to come in and see, participate. Mind you, keep in mind these are free for fans to go in and see their favorite players, see one,
Yeah.
maybe one of their favorite teams and whatnot. And back when Bruce Arians was the coach, you know, they had more access.
Yeah.
Things have changed over a good part of a decade, I want to say now,
Yeah.
if my mind serves me correctly and if I'm doing my math properly. There's been some turnover, and as we've seen those changes, each coach has brought those training caps available to the fans,
Mhm.
has decreased.
Yeah.
So w- why the change? Even that from last season to this season, there's no change in the coaching or any of the like.
Mhm.
Remains the same, but there are still, that is decreasing, and they're making it even harder for fans to, have that time with the players.
I think disconnect. So it, when you're a coach like Gannon, and you're focused on we're trying to make this team the best team that we can be. Where that's my only focus. That's great. That's your only focus. But if I'm looking at it from a support standpoint, if I'm looking at it from a I know I'm mixing metaphors, but from an ASU point of view, where it's activate the valley, right? You have to have the fans that do that. And so what happens, because I remember going to practices with my sons. I mean, I live really close to the stadium, and so we would go and we'd make a couple hours out of it, maybe sign some autographs. And so the excitement that would come just from those interactions, just being able to watch the practices, and especially if a lot of when you think there's a good I was going to say a lot, but a good percentage of fans that that those kids, they play youth football.
Right.
So when they're going there with their teams, or even if they're going with their parents and they're saying, "Oh, we run that, or we run a little something different," and so just the excitement that comes from that, and so then you share that with somebody, you share that, and the excitement is passed on. Those are things that can help with the energy that surrounds a team. But if a coach is not necessarily tapped into that, all they're thinking about is that doesn't matter. I just want to make, if I can make my team the best team it can be, they don't need to see it in practice. They need to see it on the field. No, 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 no. They need to be able to see it and interact and be able to try to build that goodwill and start from the foundation and build it up. So I think there's a disconnect there, and somebody needs to, I won't say mandate, but really have a good conversation with the coach, or really maybe even with the GM, because maybe it's the GM that's on board with that. But I think the further when you start to distance yourself from the fans in that way, it'll be really, one of the things I say to Ed all the time is I mentioned this. It's a quote that I heard from Jerry Jones, where he said, "I don't care if people love us or hate us. What I care is if they're indifferent. I care about apathy." So apathy is the definition of you're lukewarm. You care not, you're neither love nor hate the team. You don't care either way. So if you get to the point where you get so far removed from the fan base that they don't care either way, that doesn't bode well, especially for a team that's only, if you think about the time that the Arizona Cardinals have been in the Valley, there's only been a handful, and I mean a handful as in put in your 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth, one, five in your hand, where you can say that they've really been good, right?
Mhm.
So why would you want to erode that? Why would you want to take away from that? No, no, no. We want as much access as possible to be able to galvanize the fan base.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know we can talk so much on this topic, but there's been so many changes with the Arizona Cardinals, and as far as access goes, and you would think that they would open that up more accessibility,
Hmm.
because that also, because if you don't, that's detrimental in so many ways. It affects your culture, with affects the team, and therefore, we are seeing what we are seeing, and the
Yeah,
fans are not invested as much, even, and then even the media also sees that the fans are not invested as much, then maybe even it circles to the media not being as invested into your team, into your season,
yeah.
and it just, it's just a whole, what's the right word?
It's a vicious cycle.
Encapsulation.
Yeah.
So, that's just, one of my thoughts, but we will table that topic for, to continue on another day. But we do, before we do wrap up here, just, when, like, 60 seconds, I do want to touch on one thing is with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They have been plagued with so many injuries,
Yeah.
especially the last week. I can't
Yeah.
even count, or say, the guys that they have lost, and it seems like they were getting better, or like or on the road to possibly get better, and be able to have a good second part of the season, and
Hmm.
maybe make a push to the playoffs. And now they've lost, pitchers. One has a broken foot, the other one has a broken wrist. Then we have several pitchers that have elbow issues. So
Yeah. Corbin
what?
Carroll with the frac. Yeah. There's so much stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other outfielders in there also plagued by injury, but or infielders. How can the Diamondbacks get past this being the rocky season that they've had?
Um, but I think as we record this, the Diamondbacks are what, 8.5 behind, 8.5 games behind the Dodgers, if I'm not mistaken. But um, you we talked about leadership, right? So we touched upon that a couple different times. So if Torey Lovello is the leader, as the manager, and he's been criticized for maybe his for how his softer approach maybe with the team this year. I think what fans need to understand is that, especially with with analytics being so prevalent, is that
Mm,
man, a lot of the decision making is taken out of the hands of the manager, and so they're just trying to be on board with the analytics team on in a lot of ways. But how do you the Diamondbacks, they they need to really it's understand their self-worth. So what does that mean? That means whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Whether you believe you can or you can't,
right.
you're right. If you believe that there are too many injuries and you can't overcome them, you're right. If you believe that there are so many injuries, but that we have enough talent on this team to be able to overcome them, you're right there too.
Mhm,
So what needs to happen is that in those moments, because there's always going to be that moment that there's a decision point. It's like when you're watching a movie where you can tell where the main character steps up and grows and now is going to be great, or in some of those movies where you can see where that main character shrinks. So it's if you have an inning where you give up 3 runs off of errors, that's the opportunity for you to step up and say, okay, no, we got this. Let's take a deep breath. And it's not woe is me. It's here is our opportunity. That's what it comes down to. Because the manager can say all he wants about how he loves you and how he supports you and how he knows that there is talent, but you have to go and execute. That is the easiest thing to say, and it's the challenge for any team, because it's easy as heck to say we're down by 4 runs it's let's
Mhm.
just go home. Let's just go home. The trip is over. So it's one of those things because the ownership group has decided to spend some money on this team, and so it hasn't worked out well for them. Not because of underperformance per se, but because of injuries more so than underperformance. But yeah, it's you have to believe. And what is that? It sounds like awesome. Like we trying to sit in a circle and we're trying to meditate, but no, you got to believe. And so what do? You when you believe, you have faith, and what do you do in faith? You act on the faith, and that's what gets you there, even when
Yeah.
challenges come through. And that's where the Diamondbacks are right now, really.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it's not too late. Maybe they can make another miraculous run to the playoffs and World Series. You know, and anything can happen.
That's it's again. I know it sounds cheesy, but you and I, especially, I ain't gonna go. We talked about stuff like off air, right? So if
Right.
you think about the challenges, facing challenges, right? So you
Right.
face challenges, so you can either say no, I'm not, or you can say yes, I am. It didn't make it easy because you say yes, I
Mhm.
am going to be. I'm going to move forward. It was still as challenging, but the fact that you made up your mind you was
The
going to get through it.
mentality.
It might have taken you longer than you wanted to, but you were going to get through it. And that's the same thing with when it comes to this team. Not all teams, but this team, because this team it would be different if you were, yeah, if it was comprised of a bunch of me first guys. But from when you look at this team is comprised of a bunch of guys that mean well and they want to do well. So just don't look for the shoe to drop, meaning for the next bad thing to happen. Look for the next good thing to happen, and you be the one that makes that thing happen without necessarily pushing or trying to or trying to try too hard.
Right. No, I like that. So I have faith, and things can turn around. We have the All-Star break here literally just around the corner.
Yeah.
So we will see how they fare in their return from that.
Yep.
But Javon, I just want to say thank you for coming on, for joining me here.
My pleasure.
Um, you know, Javon Adams, guys from Easy Sports Talk Radio, with Ed Smith, joining me and giving us his deep perspective on things. So, can you go ahead and let our people know where they can go ahead and follow you and follow your work?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're gonna have me on again because I'm that dude that just comes with the other types of takes. But I appreciate you for
Hey,
having me on.
I know
You know I
you.
appreciate you. You know I
That's why I love
appreciate
having you
you.
on.
I appreciate you. No, but you go to easysportstalk.com, easysportstalk.com. I do music, so you can go to, javonadams.com. That's JAVONADAMS.com. Yeah, so I try to stay busy. So those are the big the sites to check out. But Ed and I trying to stay active. We a little bit of a hiatus for some trying to get ourselves right mentally and physically. But yeah, easysportstalk.com. That's how you can stay in contact us. So much appreciated.
Yes, definitely recommend you guys give them a follow, tune in, listen in. A lot of great conversation there. I know it because I've been there, I've been a part of it. So,
Good.
looking forward to having you guys back on the airwaves.
Yes, ma'am.
And to everyone listening or watching here on YouTube channel, go ahead and don't forget to go ahead and follow us on Instagram at goodness gracious, I forgot my own social media handle. It is at sports.pov.az, and you can follow me, Joanna Rosalie Joe, your host, at all social media at JROSALYE. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, watching, or listening. This was Sports Point of View. Make sure you go ahead and give us a follow, listen, click that subscribe button from wherever it is that you listen to podcast and on YouTube channel at J Rosalie. Thank you all. Until next time, this was Sports Point of View.